When you experience the loss of a loved one, certain emotional reactions are predictable. In fact, counselors tell us these feelings can be counted on whether we want them to or not. Over the past 2 weeks, we've considered shock and anger, two of the feelings we can count on in the grief cycle. Our topic today is guilt, also an unavoidable emotion when one walks through the valley of the shadow of death. Whereas anger is basically the why me phase, guilt is the why not me phase. It runs the gamut from what else could I have done to prevent this to I can name things I should have done to prevent this to I should have been there when it happened to there are things I should have said or love I should have shown. Those are natural feelings. Even if you were the most compassionate and attentive caregiver imaginable, when a loved one dies, there's always the nagging shoulda, coulda, woulda emotion. I should have done more. I could have said more. Given another chance, I would have related differently. My father died after a week's bout with flu-like symptoms. For the last few days of his life, we talked by phone. He had a live-in caregiver. He was doing fine. We chatted, we laughed. He assured me all was well. I promised I would visit him soon. In fact, I visited with him every week, usually several times a week. There was nothing to worry about. Then on a Saturday afternoon, he had a sudden heart attack. When it happened, I was at the church officiating at a wedding. When I arrived at the emergency room, it was too late. I sat by his bed, gazing at his lifeless body. The man who had been my hero all my life long, the man in whose footsteps I tried so inadequately to follow, the man who in so many ways validated my sense of self, and I sobbed. The loss was too great to comprehend at that moment, and even worse were the feelings of guilt. We had gone several days without face-to-face contact. He had died without me at his side. I was overwhelmed with a sense of failure. Later on, a friend helped me put the event in a more rational context. My dad did not die of the virus he had been experiencing. That was pretty much over. He died of a heart attack. No one could have seen it coming. Furthermore, he did not die alone, longing for a hand to hold in the darkness. Dad was a lifelong Yankees fan. He died at age 86 after turning off the television, having watched the Yankees defeat the Boston Red Sox with his girlfriend. A physician friend said to me later, "If I can arrange to die like that, sign me up." Anyway, the friend who helped me process my guilt reminded me that Dad's death was not my fault, that it was not lonely and desperate, and that the quality of my relationship with him was based on the love we had shared for more than 50 years, not on my presence or absence in a particular moment on a particular afternoon. Do you remember when Jesus wept after the death of Lazarus? It was when Martha, the dead man's sister, said, "Teacher, if you had come when we called for you, my brother would not have died." Now, Jesus knew that Lazarus was about to be released from that tomb, that Martha and Mary's tears of grief were soon to be turned into smiles of joy, and that he, Jesus, was not responsible for the illness or the death of his friend. But even so, Jesus wept. Perhaps in that moment, even he felt the inevitable emotion of guilt that Martha projected at him, the inevitable emotion of guilt that everyone feels when someone dear is lost. When it happens to you, just know that the feeling is merely that, a feeling, and does not connote reality. It's part of the grief cycle, something we will experience even when there is no reason to. It just means that you loved that other person, and you wished desperately there was something else you could have done. And that wish makes you wonder for a moment if that something else actually existed. Just know that ultimately, the quality of your relationship with another person is not defined by how they died, but rather by how the two of you related while they were still alive. Consider these two questions. First, in dealing with the pains of grief, why is it important to process feelings with both heart and head? Second, in going through the grief cycle, what does our faith say to us about guilt and grace? I'll see you next week when our topic will be the temporary depression that we feel in the grief cycle.